My professor was happy when I told him I was happy to fail his class. After graduating college, I was dealing with a lot of burnout, and it wasn't because I couldn't create, it was because with all the critiques, fear, and shame of doing bad, when I finally got home, I finally had enough comfort to process everything I went through during school. I had to reconstruct the way I viewed performance. School teaches you a lot of skill, but one flaw is you hear so much criticism that it can slowly destroy your self esteem. People talk a lot about enjoying the process, but how can I enjoy the process when what's constantly focused on is how bad I'm doing rather than the fact that I'm learning? I had one professor who spoke in perspective and nuance rather than just direct criticism. He was the one professor whose class I wasn't even upset at failing because he forced me to look at myself rather than adding to my insecurities of not being the artist I wanted to be. He taught me something I'm now learning is called cushioning in conversations. Cushioning is the difference between your head is too big and, hey, sometimes when we sit too close to the canvas, we can get caught in the details and misportraying the overall piece. Why don't you take a step back? It's honesty, but with guidance. It's critique, but with connection. It not only gives a critique, but it gives a solution for how to see and how to gauge your progress in a healthier way. That changed a lot for me because it reminded me that even though I wasn't where I wanted to be, I was still learning. And that made the process so much more bearable. When I progressed, I thanked him on my final day and told him how grateful I was to actually fail his class because this was something I carry with me now. You can lose a lot of trust trying to make people see your point if you forget emotional connection. Without connection, honesty can come off as judgmental, but with connection, people become more open to understanding. And now I notice people respond to my critiques as an artist and just as an overall person much more openly too. My background life wasn't the best, and I grew up learning to be hyper independent. Among other things, I had to teach myself how to do my homework. My family wasn't very patient, and in the early 2000s, it wasn't cool to not be smart. I learned to feel ashamed for asking for help. It felt like weakness. But that came with a con. When I failed, instead of asking for help, I just wouldn't go to class. I tell myself I do the homework later, ask for help later, fix it later. What better way to deal with shame than to avoid it? I was too anxious to ask for help and too avoidant to show up for myself. I had good grades in almost all my classes except math, and thankfully, my middle school teachers organized a class specifically for kids failing math. That teacher became, or that teacher was the quote unquote fun teacher, and it helped so much because for once, learning didn't feel humiliating. I felt a lot less shame there. I ended up graduating high school a year early, so I didn't fully realize this pattern was a problem until college. Then I was reliving it all over again shame, avoidance, trying so hard but still doing badly. And at the same time, I was going through some of the worst things someone could go through back at home, and it affected my ability to learn. But I never told anyone because I didn't want pity. I had seen what happened when other people opened up. Suddenly, everybody knows your business. People stop treating you normally. They pity you. They start treating you like you're incapable instead of just struggling. So I put all the pressure on myself instead. Even when I was trying, it still felt like I wasn't doing enough because I already had a bad history with failure in my mind. I never asked anyone to change my grades. I never used my home life as an excuse. Even though it realistically should have been a reason to drop out, I put the responsibility on myself to change. I only asked that other people treated me fairly. And I think that's why that professor affected me so much. For the first time, I had somebody critique my work without making me feel like my mistakes said something about who I was as a person. He wasn't removing accountability, he wasn't lowering the standard. He was just teaching in a way that left room for humanity. That class made me realize how much shame affects people's ability to learn, create, and even show up for themselves. Because when people already feel ashamed, harshness usually doesn't motivate them. It just confirms the voice already in their head. And I think that's why I was genuinely happy to fail his class. Because failing that class taught me more than succeeding and than a lot of others ever did. It taught me that honesty and connection don't have to compete with each other. You can tell people the truth without making them feel small. And now, as an artist, I carry that with me when I critique other people too.